Hey guys, welcome back to more relationship stories. In this video, my awful entitled sister gets a huge reality check after she stole my house. She claimed that I gifted her the entire property and thus she had a right to trespass. Let's dive right into the video. And the first story starts like this. Throughout my childhood, my younger sister has always caused issues. I would be lying if I said it was not our parents' fault. They had spoiled her rotten all the time. Whatever she wanted, she would get. As for me and our two brothers, we would barely get listened to. As the eldest, I ended up taking on most of the work around the house, from cooking to cleaning. I did it all. Our parents could not be bothered and neither could sweet little JC, so it was down to me and the others, but since they were younger and I wanted them to focus on school, I took most of the burden. "Tom, give Lacey your breakfast," my mother would tell me some mornings when we were all relatively young. "Why? She has her own. She is a growing child and needs more. Now hand it over and don't argue." Nothing was ever very extreme. I still have some love for my parents and maybe in time that will grow and things can be rebuilt, but after recent events that ideal seems far off. My parents nor my sister ever visited other relatives. Mom and dad seem to just want to be cut off from everyone, focus all their attention on the golden child. Me and my two brothers would visit everyone when we could, which I knew they appreciated. My grandmother appreciated the most, especially since our grandfather died. She was lonely and it was not fair that she lived alone with nobody else, so I would go over as often as I could, at least every 2 days. Whenever possible, I would bring my brothers, but usually it was just me. When she passed just a few years ago, I was devastated. She was more of a mother to me than my own was, and I knew that I would miss her terribly. I was not even thinking about her will, did not open it until months later, when my parents began blowing up my phone about it. "What did you do? Why does her will say that?" they yelled. I hung up the phone and opened my drawer, where I had left said will untouched since being handed it. I opened it up, trying to push down the grief which was resurfacing now. Reading the contents, I was more than shocked. She had left me everything, and I mean everything. Her house, her money, all of her assets. I guess I should have assumed that she would favor me in her will, but this was insane. She had written notes to us all, explaining why her will was like this. The letter to my parents was more of a telling off for how they treated their children. I stared at the will for ages, unsure what to do. At this point I was 20 and had moved out of my parents' house as per their request. I had barely anything to my name and was living in a dodgy apartment while attending college. This money and the house itself would really help me out. She even wrote so in her letter to me that she knew I needed this, even though I never told her of my situation. My grandmother's house is quite far away from my college, so I chose not to stay there and instead use some of the money to rent a better house, of course never intending to sell her home, I just couldn't. I met up with my parents and Lacey to discuss the will. It went about as well as you would guess. "What did you do to have her sign everything over to you? Did you manipulate that poor old woman?" my mother demanded. "No, of course not," I replied, already feeling myself getting defensive. "Then why did she leave you everything? What about me?" Lacey wailed. "When was the last time you visited her?" I asked. "What?" Lacey scoffed. "The last time you visited, when was it?" "Well, I don't remember." "Exactly, you don't remember because it was years ago while I was visiting multiple times a week. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to, and because it was the right thing to do and she did not want to be alone." "Why would she give anything to you when you never came by? Or you too?" I motioned to my parents. "Don't get cheeky with us. She was my mother. She would have given me something," my mother yelled. "Where's she gonna stay anyway?" my mother asked. "What do you mean? When she's older?" "I don't know, but why is that my problem to figure out?" "She's your sister." "Okay, but nobody helped me out other than grandma." Huh. We all argued back and forth for hours. It was draining and a horrible conversation that I desperately wanted to get out of. Eventually though, we settled on some sort of conclusion. She can live there temporarily when she needs to. So a few years later, when my sister was 18, she moved into my grandma's house on the basis that it was temporary. Most of my grandma's belongings I had sorted through, barely any I could bear to part with, so ended up getting a storage locker. At this point, I was almost ready to graduate college and my sister had been made aware that she'd only get around 6 months in my grandmother's house before I moved in. After those 6 months, I met up with my sister and she handed me the keys with no fuss, which was the first red flag. When I was finally ready to move a few weeks later, I took the keys and drove to the house. The keys did not work though, the locks looked shiny, clearly they had been changed. I could not believe it. Well, actually I could. "Can I help you?" my sister asked through the door. "Lacey, have you changed the locks? And why are you inside?" I asked with a sigh. Because this is my house." No, it is not, and you know that. You handed me back the keys. Well, you asked for the keys back, not the house. Lacey, you cannot just steal this house. I have the paperwork to prove that it is mine. Ha, yes she can, dear. My mother piped up from inside. Great. They eventually opened the door though. Both my parents and Lacey were on the other side. See, here are the deeds. Lacey shoved some papers into my hands. The papers were some printed off deeds online with no watermark or anything, stating that I was handing over my ownership of the property with, of course, a forged signature. Really? Who are you gonna fool with these? A blind mouse? I was laughing. Don't laugh at your sister, my father scolded. And now leave before we call the cops on you for trespassing. I did not leave, instead I went into my car and got the proper deeds along with the original copy of the will, which also claimed my ownership. I knocked on again, and when they opened I showed them the paperwork, making sure it was still out of reach in case they tried anything. See, these are the real deeds and I can assure you they will win in a legal battle against yours, I stated. I'm calling the police, Lacey yelled and did just that. She sobbed on the phone until they arrived, claiming there was a break-in and that I was harassing her. I stepped far back of the house to make sure the police did not get the wrong idea. When they arrived, they quickly launched into action and ran towards the house where my sister was still on the phone saying that I was getting aggressive even though I stood meters away. Oh, you're here, she said once she finally noticed the officers. Where is the man? One asked. Lacey pointed over at me. It is him. He was attacking you just now seconds ago? Well, not seconds ago. He tried to break in, I swear. The officers walked over to me, clearly sensing something was slightly off about her story. What's going on here? Well, this is my sister. I let her live here for a while, but now she has decided to literally steal my house. That is not true. He gifted me this property and I have the deeds to prove it, Lacey yelled, storming over with my parents in tow. Maybe don't show those just yet, sweetheart, my father whispered. And why not? One of the officers asked. Because they are fake, I replied with a sigh. I handed over my real documents explaining that the house was passed down to me and that Lacey had no rights to it and that she had gone behind my back and changed the locks. This is just not true, Lacey wailed, tears streaming from her eyes. It is not fair. I deserve this house. She shoved her fake deeds into the officer's chest despite my father's protest. The officers very quickly noted their fakeness, clearly trying hard not to laugh it off. You are under arrest, one of the officers started, but before he could finish, Lacey was sprinting back towards the house. My parents called after her, but before anyone could do anything, she had locked the doors behind her. This is my house, she yelled, and for the next 10 minutes we could hear her running around inside like crazy. Some glasses were falling to the floor and smashing, but she clearly did not care. Open up or we will break this door down, an officer yelled. Never, Lacey yelled. Lacey, sweetheart, you have to open the door, my mother yelled, clearly understanding how serious this was now getting. The next thing we know, it has gone silent inside and a few minutes later the police busted through the door. Please don't take this house away from me, Lacey wailed from the corner. This is not your house and you're going to have to leave. Now stay calm, we are not gonna hurt you, the officer stated. After another few hours of this back and forth wailing, Lacey eventually agreed to leave the house, where she was then handcuffed, which set her into another fit of rage. Get off me! You have no right to do this, she yelled. We do, and you are under arrest for trespassing, verbal aggression, and for producing fraudulent government documents. Please don't take her away. This is all one big misunderstanding, we promise, my mother yelled. They did not listen and hauled her away. This is all your fault, my father screamed at me. Never in my life have I seen him so angry. How is this my fault? I yelled back. You have done nothing but raise that spoiled brat. If anyone is to blame, it is you too. Why didn't you just let her keep the house? None of this would have happened. Well, none of this would have happened if you could have manned up and stood up to your wife and daughter. How dare you? My father swung his hand towards me, but before he could even reach my face, I punched him in the nose. He fell to the ground. His nose began bleeding immediately, but other than that, he was okay. I felt a surge of satisfaction at the impact. My parents left after I told them I would call the police, and I went inside my home. It took a while to sort everything out and make sure that Lacey's things were gone, tidy up the place and change the locks again, but after a few weeks everything was in order and I could live here in peace. My brothers also live with me and it's easier than them trying to find somewhere else. Lacey ended up getting 200 hours of community service and an ankle bracelet which is tagged to our parents' home. Something they don't seem very happy about, and it turns out they were trying to get her out of the home for a reason. And yeah guys, if you would have been in this situation, would you have done the same as OP, or would you have given the house to Lacey? Let me know in the comments. I think OP definitely did the right thing. That family was crazy entitled. Absolutely despicable. The next one is titled, I, 26 female, think my boyfriend, 30 male, is exaggerating or faking his illness. And by the way, if you have watched until here and enjoyed the stories, please don't forget to like the video because that helps me tremendously. So I saw someone's post yesterday about navigating life with a partner who has fibromyalgia and felt inspired to post here. I'm hoping you all can give me some solid advice. So I've been with my boyfriend for a little under 2 years. In the time we've been together, his chronic pain, which is not connected to any particular or known condition as he refuses to go to the doctor, has gotten worse and worse. It's reached a point where he is almost incapable of doing chores or a house project and is usually too exhausted and in pain to make or agree to plans, and getting him to do anything outside the house together is like pulling teeth. His objections always revolve around his pain and fatigue. I've never suffered from chronic pain, thank God, so I'm not one to judge or accuse someone of just making it up, since the pain itself is invisible and my boyfriend looks perfectly healthy. However, he's now been unemployed for about 4 months and I'm starting to question things. I'm starting to feel doubtful for a number of reasons, and the main ones are that A, he never turns down his friends' invitations to hang out even when the activity is something physically intense like kayaking or going hiking or going to a music festival, and B, he's never too tired or in too much pain to have intercourse with me. Over time, it's almost made it seem like he's conveniently in an unbearable amount of pain when he has to do something he is not at all interested in, for example chores, and I'm starting to feel hurt that he just does not seem to want to hang out with me outside of what we do, lazing around the house. I've never accused him of faking or exaggerating his pain, but I've tried to talk to him about doing more fun stuff together, and it always circles back to his pain or him accusing me of trying to keep him from spending time with his friends, which I'm not trying to do by any means. I've done a ton of research into autoimmune disorders and other conditions that could be causing his problem, always bringing my findings and suggestions to him, but he just does not believe a doctor or any traditional medicine would help him. I'm also bothered because when we go to family outings or parties that we're both invited to, it's rare but it does happen, he will talk to anyone who will listen's ear off about how bad his chronic pain is and how frustrating it is to not be able to find a solution. Well, the thing is, he's not actually looking for a solution, he just smokes weed every day and calls that good enough while lamenting and complaining that his body is the way it is. He also refuses to return to work because of his pain. For additional context though, he seems to have really extreme muscle spasms and tightness, particularly in his back. I'm happy to support him through hard times, but the fact that he won't work is getting concerning and I feel severely stuck. I'm not interested in supporting him financially on a long-standing basis, but at the moment I partially am by covering some of his expenses. If this post makes me a total a-hole for questioning the degree of my boyfriend's chronic pain, so be it. I just need help and answers, so here are my questions. Where do I go from here? Do you think it's possible that my boyfriend is using his pain as a crutch? Should I put some kind of ultimatum in place that will get him medical care and attention? Your advice is appreciated. And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you would do here if you were in this situation. Would you assume that the boyfriend is really just faking it? Would you confront him? Let me know in the comments. A user in the comments said, even if he does have chronic illness, he's not doing anything to get a diagnosis or treatment, and he's willing to push on for things that benefit him and only him. Clearly, he has developed a drug addiction that he has no plans of curbing. I'm chronically ill. I am busting my ass trying to find answers and help because living like this sucks. I do everything in my power to support my partner and care for our home. While sometimes that's not a ton, I always prioritize contributing to my household over kayaking, which even if I could push through to do, would put me down for a week. This man is using and taking advantage of you, disabled or not. He has also dumped this on you without you consenting to be his financial caretaker. You're not even married. There's no in sickness and health here, leave him. And now we got an update to the story that goes like this. Thank you to everyone who responded to my post and was so compassionate and kind. It was incredible to hear from so many people who actively battle chronic pain and illness and those with loved ones who do. I hope to continue deepening my empathy towards anyone who is struggling with an invisible illness. But now onto my update. Armed with some fresh perspective and some fresh frustration, I talked to my boyfriend and told him that he needs to see a doctor or I will no longer be able to support him financially and stand by while he remains unemployed and unmotivated to get the help he needs. I also addressed the idea of managing and balancing his energy levels differently so that we are able to share household responsibilities more effectively, spend quality time together and keep him doing the things he loves with his friends. But his response was really bad. He told me that if I'm not willing to step up and clean around the house, something I'm already doing, that there's no use living together and that my efforts to clean are the bare minimum and not good enough for his standards anyway. He was also really mad that I have not taken initiative to take care of yard projects and car repairs. He sat there and spouted off a whole list of things I'm not noticing and cleaning. And once again he was focused on this idea that I don't like his friends or am jealous of them and want him spending less time with them, which is not true at all. This really stung though. He basically brushed over everything I said and focused on my perceived faults. This told me everything I needed to know and I told him I was leaving and he was just mad. Not sad or hurt at all, I'm still crying excessively over his whole reaction. I still don't know how real or unreal his chronic pain is, but I guess it doesn't matter anymore. Thank you again everyone for your support and kindness. I'm truly at a loss. The next one is an HOA revenge story. Short history: fall 2005, SO and I buy our first house together. We are happy, baby's on the way, house is cute and in a new subdivision, HOA just formed. We are at the end of a blunt cul-de-sac, quiet, no traffic, neighbors are nice. However, 3-ish years later, the US economy crapped the bed and wiped us out. Over half of the homes in our subdivision have been foreclosed on or are in the process. Me and mine are not paying on our mortgage. So we have moved out and a family friend and his family have moved in. They lost their house and he pays me a discounted rent. I'm not paying the mortgage but maintaining the house with his rent. The HOA is having trouble maintaining the common areas and keeping things clean because of lack of funds. Junky cars and dead/dying landscaping are everywhere. One home burned to its foundation. A few months after my friend moves in, red fire lane paint is applied to the curbs of all the cul-de-sacs in the subdivision. I'm furious because it prevents street parking in front of the house. Anytime I need to stop by to fix something or my tenant has a guest, we must park in front of a neighbor's house or in the common collector streets and walk in. I called the local fire department to ask why they need so many fire lanes, seeing how there were no hydrants nearby. They told me that they had not requested additional fire lanes nor had they asked for curbs to be painted. They said anyone can just paint a curb red, it's the signage or a hydrant's presence that makes it a legal fire lane. The paint's just there to help you interpret the signage. I check and sure enough, no signs. Come to find out, it's a ploy by the HOA to drum up even more funds. If they paint curbs red and call it a safety zone, their bylaws allow them to fine a homeowner for violating the safety zone. Funny also that the HOA president lives at the end of one of the cul-de-sacs and now the neighbors can no longer park in front of her house without getting safety zone fines. So then one evening, just past twilight, wearing a high-vis vest, safety glasses and work boots, I painted over the red curb with boring grey paint specifically designed for concrete with great coverage. I do the entire cul-de-sac. 3 weeks later it is red again, 2 days later grey, 5 weeks later red, then grey with silicone top sealer, then red that flakes off almost immediately, then red again, flakes, then a sign that reads safety zone, no parking. For the lack of payment, the home is now under notification of foreclosure and I'm working with an agency to help navigate and file all the paperwork needed so we can short sell. Short selling in this context means that although we promised to pay the bank $350,000 plus interest for the house, they would forgive any amount we own as long as we turned the house over in good condition, for example not flush concrete down the toilets or poke pinholes in the water pipes. Which screws us, but it's better than owing $350K on a house worth only $165K that will be legally taken from us in short order. F you Reagan, I'm still waiting for that trickle. Anyway, during a short sale, you're required to notify any potential parties that could have liens on the house, and well, this includes the HOA. I'm up to date on my dues and I have no outstanding violations. So of course I think I'm in the clear, but no, the HOA suddenly comes up with a whole list of violations that have not been addressed or remedied for 5 months, plus additional fines for the delay. The HOA then said that they notified me in November already, but cannot seem to produce copies of these multiple notices of violation. They only have the current one in March listing all the outstanding violations, examples: black stains on driveway, uncoiled garden hose, unapproved tree, missing bush, missing foliage, dead tree. I informed them that the stains were tire marks from driving into the garage. The unapproved tree they did in fact approve, and the missing bushes they approved the removal of. Here is a copy of the plan and your approvals with your name on it. It's not my fault that you don't know what you approved. The dead tree, well, many trees tend to lose leaves and fall, like around November. They might look dead if you're just making up violations in February, but are just dormant and waiting for spring. And even if it was dead, you cannot replace a tree in November, December, January or February. No nursery sells saplings that late in the season unless you want a Yule-tide tree. How can someone be reasonably expected to replace a dead tree in the off-season? The HOA delays responding, and the short sale is on a timer. If I don't have all legal items, payments for liens, and documents into the escrow officer by this date, my short sale will fall through and I will owe $350K plus interest on a $165,000 house that is soon to be foreclosed on. The HOA fines and fees total around $1,955, $45 short of where felony fraud starts. I'm absolutely furious. This HOA is gonna F me one last time and I will pay for the experience. So then I talk to the escrow officer and see what she needs. Only the money for the HOA lien and you will close escrow tomorrow. She has seen reams of these come through, with similar amounts of fines requested by HOAs that hold up short sales. None of them exceed $2,000. I ask her what form of payment will satisfy her as an escrow officer: money order, cash or a check. A check would be easiest for you, don't you think? If I write a check to the HOA for $1,955, then hand it to you, that will satisfy escrow? Yep. You will mail the check to the HOA after the document's record? Yes. You will have a check in 25 minutes. Well, the next day, on the phone with the escrow officer, sitting in my car in a parking lot at 9 AM, did the documents record? Did the short sale go through? Yes, I will mail out finalized documents and any other items before close of business today. Thank you, and hang up. I then walk into the local branch of my bank and inform the teller I need to place a stop payment on a check. Edit, my bad, I did not include the fallout, so here it goes, and the HOA never tried to collect or contact us again. And the next one is titled, "You wanna try to take 9 inches of our property? We will take 20 foot of yours." We have lived in our house for about 8 years in a rural neighborhood in Arizona. About a year ago, this dude from California bought the lot next to us and threw a fit about the stuff we had on the property line. We had put a single fence pole vaguely where the property line was. We had not had any sort of land survey done. It was supposed to just be a temporary marker that became a permanent marker. The dude was absolutely livid that we had vehicles parked on his property. The very tip of one of our cars was touching the established boundary, and he threatened to have our vehicle towed. So we simply had an actual land survey done, and it turned out the property line was a good 20 feet into his property. Homeboy should have just let sleeping dogs lie and not been an a-hole about a few inches. Edit, I had some journalists reach out to me and ask for some more comments, so here are the updates you asked for. So this is a small rural neighborhood in the mountains of Arizona. All the houses are 3 to 5 acre horse properties. The roads are all dirt and unmaintained. It used to be a very understandable place to live, but in the last few years it has been developed and property values have been going up, even quadrupling since we moved in here in 2016. This has attracted a crowd of people who care what yards look like, who simply were not here when this was just cheap. The neighbor is one of these new people. We moved here specifically because the neighborhood had a bunch of messy yards already, and we wanted to also have lenient neighbors. We lived in harmony with our neighbors' junky yards for years. The neighbor introduced himself by calling the county on a bunch of us anonymously. We knew that he called on us because he was bragging about calling the county on several other of the neighbors for their messy yards, so whether he intentionally included us in the report or not, he brought the inspectors to the neighborhood. He came on our property by at least 40 feet before there was a fence to closely examine our piles of scrap metal. We caught this on camera and confronted him in text. It turned out he was very angry that he had purchased land next to a pseudo scrapyard. Also, we had several cars in various stages of disassembly and piles of materials. Also keep in mind, this is the country. This is normal out here. We are on 5-acre lots. Another detail that I missed in my original post, he is not even living on this lot. He bought a lot with a very small cabin 3 houses down along with the lot next to us with the intention of turning it into an income property. After we confronted him in text, he confronted us in person in our front yard, leaning against our no trespassing sign and screaming obscenities at us. Number 3, we have not even seen him since we saw him on our security camera observing the survey markers, dismayed. It's entirely possible that we entirely chased him out of the neighborhood. The people on the other side of his lot who have an equally trashed yard from their small-scale pig farming operation that he should have known existed before buying the land had such a bad experience with him that she had a restraining order on him. They are also having a potentially equally funny dispute about a shed that she built fully on his lot over 15 years ago, which means they are going to have to go to court over who now owns it, and our adverse possession laws are certainly on her side. Currently, we are building an ugly fence on the newly surveyed property line. And yeah guys, that was certainly a property drama saga, and by the way, if you have any property drama / neighbor stories to share that happened in your own life, I would love to read about them either in the comments or on r/Ripestories on Reddit, which to be honest is a much better place to post fully fledged stories, and there's a good chance that I will read them in a video. Thank you so much in advance. And before we end the video, we will read one last story from r/PettyRevenge to end the video on a good note. It is titled, "Beep your horn at my mom, get mildly inconvenienced." So my mother, 60s, was putting shopping bags into the side door of her car whilst in a car park. While doing this, a lady in her 20s was parked diagonally in front of her, started driving slowly towards her, crossing the midlines of the spaces. She then honked her horn and wafted her hands at my mother, indicating for her to get out of the way. Well, obviously, this annoyed my mother, who just shook her head and continued putting the shopping away. The lady then honked again and shouted out the window to, "Move your trolley, I don't like reversing." Again, my mother continued putting away her shopping, as the lady had more than enough space to reverse out as there were no cars beside or behind her. By the time my mother had finished putting away the shopping, the lady honked a third time, so my mother left the shopping cart in front of the lady's car, quickly got into her own car and drove away smiling, glancing in the rear view as the angry lady had to get out of her car to move the trolley away. What a great success! And yeah guys, please don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again tomorrow.